Hi, everybody. Welcome to Science on the Screen, as funded by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. Yay, Alfred P. Sloan. My name's Christina Geierman, and I am a science teacher at North Bend High School. I get to talk to you today because this last year I was accepted into the M.J. Murdoch Charitable Trust's program called Partners in Science, which meant that instead of having a relaxing summer at my house, I had the honor of pretending that I was a real scientist, and I got to do a really cool research project. I worked out at the South Slough, and my advisor was Dr. Bree Yednock, and I think that covers all of the pictures on here, so I can get started. And now I get to tell you very truthfully that there are aliens among us. It is a scientific fact, and they don't look like this. I know. These are the guys that you get to meet in today's movie, Men in Black, where you meet the real heroes of the universe protecting us from alien scum. But these are the aliens that are here. These are creatures that may be familiar to you, like the English ivy, feral pigs, red ear sliders. These things are alien species. Now, in science, that doesn't mean that they're from another planet. It means that they're from another place. So an example of an alien species would be the nutria. The nutria is found originally in South America. Sorry, I'm still amused by this. This is the biggest PowerPoint I have ever done. I mean, like, California is bigger than my head. This is just amazing. Okay, so the nutria is found in South America, and that's where they evolved. They're part of that food chain. They have things that eat them and things that they eat, and everything's kind of in balance. However, they have been introduced to all of the green states here. You see, these are nice furry guys. Their fur has been used to make coats and that sort of thing, so they're imported as fur-bearing species, and then they escape. So we have them in Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, and they don't belong here. Now, it's not this individual guy's fault that he is not in South America anymore, but they have babies at a much faster rate than the nutria. They eat vegetation, their burrows destroy the banks. They're really messing up our wetlands. And that's what makes them an alien species. I was very amused when I did a Google image search for Super Invader that there actually was a wrestler by that name. But what makes a good invader? In order to be a good invader, you have to have few natural enemies. You have to have few things that will eat you or infect you. You have to have a high reproductive rate and make lots of babies to further invade the territory. You have to live for a long time and have many babies over your life. You need to be good at dispersal. And what this means is you have to be able to get from point A to point B well. And it helps if you're a generalist. So I'll give you an anti-example of that. Think of the species that's around here. It made the news a lot in the 90s, the spotted owl. The spotted owl only lives in old-growth forests. It only eats particular things. It has 1 or 2 chicks per year. Would this make a good alien species? No. You need something that doesn't care where it lives, doesn't care where it eats, is just going to hang out wherever. So this is the species I got to work with this summer. This is the European green crab. You can see it's called the green crab, but it's kind of like the olive drab crab. I didn't name it, I don't know. You can tell it's the green crab because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spines between the edge of the carapace and the eyes. It's kind of hard to see here because this one's tucked its claws underneath, but you can see the spines up there. This is the bottom side. This one's a lady crab, and you can see she's got this big shovel-shaped green abdomen. And here's a guy, and he's kind of yellow. The green crabs always look pretty much like this from the top, but from the bottom, they go through the colors of the stoplight. Which is, I don't know why. When they first molt, they're green, then they go to yellow, and then they go to red, and then they molt again and change colors. So the bottom of the crab really isn't a good way to identify them. So, are these good invaders? Well, yes, they are. They have few natural enemies. Think about that. If you've ever been to Charleston on a good low tide day and played and looked for shore crabs, green crabs are related to shore crabs. So you find them under rocks during low tide, which is very good if you're a crab. It's very bad if you're a hungry bird trying to find a crab. They have a high reproductive rate. They can actually have twice as many babies here in Oregon as they could where they were originally found, which kind of sucks for us. They are very good at dispersal. If I just kept this guy mildly damp, he could live for weeks outside of the water. They're really good at that, and they're generalists. They don't really care what they eat. They'll eat anything, live or dead, that they can fit in their mouths. Okay, so why should we worry about this? We have a lot of different kinds of crabs in our slough. Here are some of the things that are kind of concerning. If you put a Dungeness crab of the same size of a green crab, and I should have said the green crabs aren't as big as the Dungeness, they only grow up to about 4 inches in carapace size, so not as big. But if you put them with a younger Dungeness crab and give them a shell to hide under, the green crab will pretty much beat up the Dungeness and take its lunch money. It'll take over the shell and not let the Dungeness have shelter. They also reduce the amount of food available for other crabs, and they eat native clams that we and the Dungeness crab would like to eat. So another question that may be burning in your minds right now is, well, if we eat Dungeness crabs, can we eat the green crabs? Well, for science, I tried. Yes, I had Chef Frank Murphy of North Bend High School prepare some green crabs for me, and the only one of our party who really enjoyed them was my dog Rover. Had the best time ever. But they have a very strong flavor compared to Dungeness. It's even a little stronger than blue crab if you've ever been on the East Coast and had blue crab. Plus, they're kind of small crabs, so it takes a lot of work to get the meat out. The only people that actually eat these are the Portuguese, and they wait until they molt and then deep fry the soft shell ones. And I really don't think deep fried soft shell green crab is going to catch on in Coos Bay. Could be wrong, I don't know. So, where do they come from? Well, with the name European green crab, you probably guessed it, they're from Europe, up there in the North Sea. And in the North Sea, it gets so cold in the winter that they can't have a second clutch of eggs. So that's why they're actually more successful where they've invaded. The areas in green are the areas where they've invaded so far. They're making their way around the world. And red is where they probably could survive, like the ocean conditions are right, but they're not there yet, and we're worried they're coming. So in 1900, the green crabs made their way to the east coast of the United States on a ship, a sailing ship. See, in the old days, you would, to keep the ships low enough in the water, the stevedores would put rocks in the bottom of the ship. And they just get these rocks from the seashore. And we're pretty sure that that's where the green crabs came. They were hiding out in the rocks, made their way to Boston and the East Coast, and they're established there. We can't get rid of them now. And they kind of stayed on the East Coast up until the 1980s. So this is kind of weird to me, but if you are a fisherman in California and you don't want to dig up your own worms, you can pay a lot of money to buy worms online. And they will send these to you in the mail in a box full of seaweed. And then, after these folks fish with their worms, they usually dump the seaweed in the bay, and we're pretty sure that's how the green crab made their way to San Fran in 1989. Well, how'd they get here from there? Well, this is Obviously not to scale because I'm definitely bigger than a green crab in real life. This is the eggs of the green crab. The mama crab will keep them underneath her abdomen. And when they hatch into these plankton, these little larvae. That's a millimeter, about a 1/16 of an inch. They're not usually my size. Whoa. Also, the clicker usually goes one at a time, but my battery light is on, so now I'm worried. So what usually happens, usually we have winds from the northwest that pushes the water down our coast. That's why we can't really go swimming in the ocean in the summer months. The water's pretty cold coming from Alaska. But this time of year, when we have our winter storms, the wind's coming from the southwest, and it's pushing water up from California. The time when this current thing switches is called the spring transition. And in some years, this happens late, and there's plenty of time for the baby crabs to make their way up to Coos Bay. Well, there's a lady named Dr. Sylvia Behrens-Yamada who batteries, thank you, who has trapped these crabs since they first came out. In fact, there was a local oysterman by the name of Heath Hample, whose family is in the audience today, who noticed the first green crab in his oyster shells. And Sylvia came out and trapped them, and she noticed that they come on years when there's an El Nino. So I got the grant to study crabs this summer, so I wanted to see if green crabs came in on the 2015 El Nino. I wanted to see where in the bay they lived, and I was wondering if the other two species of crab, the native red rock and the native Dungeness, might affect where they're going to live. I'm going to call that the tale of three crabs. So I got an army of absolutely wonderful student volunteers to come out and help me. We set these Japanese fukui traps out overnight. We also set out minnow traps. There's me looking fabulous in my field gear. The next day we cleaned off the crabs. If we had any bycatch like sculpins, we released them back into the bay. We also released all of the Dungeness and red rock crabs after we measured them, but we killed the greens. Yeah. I'm not trying to kill the Dungeness. This is actually what I measured them with. So I measured the carapace diameter, we looked at their sex, their species, and we carefully recorded all of our data. So, first, answer the first question. Did new green crabs arrive in Coos Bay in 2015? Very yes, they did. I caught a bunch of green crabs, 127 in total. This is one bucket full that I caught. These were all about a year old, so they came in the previous summer. Then this map shows you about 100 hours worth of field work in one picture. I sampled all of these 25 sites for crabs. It's a lot of crab trapping. And Colin Williams, an intern from Bama, came out this summer, worked at the South Slough, and Bree had him working on these sites. So in this map, all the spots that are green are spots where there were green crabs. See what I did there? And all of the yellow spots were where they were absent. So, sorry about this kind of crappy line, but these are my first group of sites. Here's my graph. These are the Dungeness crabs, and these are the red rock. And you can see I didn't catch any green crabs near the mouth of the bay, and the crabs that I caught were pretty big in size. Then Bree let me take out the boat, which was terribly exciting, and I sampled these 3 sites near Shell Island. These are places that you go if you actually want to catch crabs. Not that kind of crabs, Dungeness. Hopefully the younger folks did not get that joke. At any rate, here we found really big Dungeness crabs, beautiful legal ones, and some big, beautiful red rocks. Again, absolutely no green crabs. This is the size on this axis. You can kind of see the words, but I had a computer, oops. Then I got to sample the top of the peninsula. Now we started seeing green crabs, but not a lot. And the Dungeness were still pretty big, although they're a little smaller. The previous graph was kind of over here. One aside here, because my students know I love telling stories. You see this dot right here? That's the old Pony Village boat ramp. I asked the airport if I could sample it because Sylvia used to sample it in the 90s, and to my surprise, they said yes. So I got to drive my Subaru down the runway. It was the coolest thing ever. And then I sampled some sites upriver, and this is where the problem is. Look at the numbers of green crabs. In some of the sites, there were as many green crabs as there were Dungeness. At one site, Willanche Creek, which is right there, I caught, wait, is that Willanche or Kentuck? Oh, Willanche is right there, sorry. At that site, anyway, I caught about 6 green crabs for every 1 Dungeness. And that was just scary. And this is where the Dungeness are small, where they're juveniles. So, many new crabs arrived in Coos Bay last year. The green crabs are mainly found up the river and in the South Slough. And those are the areas where the juvenile Dungeness are. The green crabs are not found where the Dungeness are big and the red rocks are. So, green crabs are found where Dungeness are small and red rock are absent. And green crabs are not found where people crab. And this is kind of the scariest part of them all. It's like this sneak attack for the crabs. Because you could be an avid outdoorsman, you could be going out crabbing. I know somebody in the audience is doing that for their general biology project this term. You probably will not catch a green crab. Because who would be crabbing in the part of the bay where you're not going to get legal-sized crabs? That just makes no sense. And unfortunately, that's where these invaders are. The other really scary thing, at the end of the year, we went out and sampled again, and these are molts of baby green crabs, and we saw a bunch of them. We also caught 49 juvenile live green crabs at 2 sites. So there's another group coming after them. And so this gives me more work for next summer. What I'm thinking of doing is trying to figure out how big the population actually is by doing a mark and recapture. That can also tell me if they're moving inside the estuary. And then I'm kind of wondering at what's happening at a smaller scale. Here's the History Museum. These pilings here used to be the old city shop office, city dock office, and it burned down. I caught a bunch of green crabs in this area. This was one of my most prolific sites. But if I went just around the corner out to here, I caught all Dungeness and red rock. So I'm wondering if there's just little areas where they're hanging on, and if there's other areas where the other crabs are excluding them. So what does this mean for our bay? I'm not really sure. I found this real threat to our bay, but I'm a science teacher. I am trying to help by making you guys aware of this, but we really need somebody to pick up the ball and keep going. The thing that we're worried about the most is if we keep getting these big years of green crabs, we might have them be able to start having babies and staying in the slough and becoming part of our crab population. So far, they've all just came and died off, and then new ones come. So we'll have to see what happens. We're also worried if this will affect the Dungeness crab fishery. It takes 3 years for Dungeness crabs to grow to market size, so it'll be another 2 years before we really know if that's a problem. I'm not sure trapping the green crabs would help or not. There was a place in Massachusetts that tried this. They set traps along the mouth of a bay every day for 30 days, and they caught as many green crabs on day 30 as day 1. So I don't know. And then the other thing is, because of global climate change, we're getting El Niños coming more frequently and more severely. And we've got the blob in the ocean, and so if we keep getting these events happening, we're going to keep getting more green crab, regardless of whether or not we trap the ones here. So Sorry, that's kind of a downer to end on. We get to watch Men in Black next. I would like to thank you, our audience, because your donations today are going to fund the North Bend High School Science Department. We're working on getting new microscopes for our kids. We're working on some really cool labs for the springs, so thank you for that. I also need to thank Dr. Bree Yednock, my advisors, Sylvia Behrens-Yamada, the Green Crab Guru, Colin, my intern, and my wonderful field assistants, Aaron, Emily, Hannah, Ed, Amber, Ben, Nathan, and Kaya, and also Heath Hample for the bait donation. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you. Yes, Mary Margaret.
So as of now, they're not reproducing here.
As of now, we did catch 2 crabs that had eggs, but that was it. So we're hoping that even if they do have babies here, that the babies will get washed out of the bay and not come back. So.
I was just thinking about if you were going to mark them and watch how they move, you wouldn't want them to be having babies all over the place.
No, and that's one of the things that I have to kind of ask myself. I killed all of the green crabs you mainly killed all of the green crabs that I caught this summer. If I do mark and recapture, I could only do in the ones that I got at the end of the summer, so I don't know if that's ethical or not. Yes, ma'am. Why, yes, I did, and I can talk to you about that afterwards. I just figured I'd hit about 15 minutes of talking and thought that the audience wouldn't be interested anymore. But they had a wide range of temperatures and salinities that they were found in, and they seemed to like the lower salinity water and higher temperatures than the Dungeness. Yes, Nat?
Can we build a wall?
Ha! Well, if we build a wall, we wouldn't just be keeping out the green crabs, we'd be messing with the other crabs that we actually like. So I don't know, you might have to ask our president about that one.
I have a question.
Okay.
Are those crabs edible? And so we have our Dungeness crab and it looks like they're just quietly trying to take over. So is there a downside to eating those? And not only that, but is everybody aware of what Fukushima is actually bringing directly to our northwest Pacific coastline of the amount of radiation? If you go and do your research, you will see that there are millions and millions of gallons of nothing walking in. And all this stuff is soaked up. So not only does it affect our crab, it affects our atmosphere and our streams and rivers. Because what is soaked out of the ocean dumps directly out of that. So are these crabs edible for us or what's the downside?
So I can answer the edible question. I don't really know enough about the radiation to... Thank you. I did try to eat them. The issue is that they're much smaller than the Dungeness. Dungeness we harvest when they're about 6.5 inches in carapace diameter. These ones, the oldest and biggest, only get to about 4. So they're much smaller. You'd have to mechanically pick them, I think. Picking them by hand just took a very long time since the legs are so small, and the flavor is much stronger than a Dungeness crab. If I was going to try to market them, I'd have to mechanically pick them and then put them in a sauce or something.
Okay, I just want everybody to be aware. We do research on Fukushima and our crabs.
Okay. Anything else? Yes. Well, we've been getting the word out in the kind of publication that's only read by government scientists. So this was in the newsletter for the South Slough. My data got put in the report that Sylvia sent to ODF&W as part of their monitoring survey. So we are trying to make a lot of people aware of what the problem is. But since we are dealing with a bunch of different organizations, so far nobody, to my knowledge, has come up with an action plan of this is what we're going to try to do to save the bay from the green crabs. Because honestly, I think we're going to have to wait and see if the Dungeness fishery is impacted. If it is, then we'll be highly motivated to fix this. If it's not, then I'm not sure. Well, maybe if it's not, then we don't have a problem. That would be great.
Can you remind
I definitely advocate smashing these guys, but they're olive green in color on the back. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks better in person, but if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spines between the eyes and the edge of the carapace. It's kind of hard to see here because of the tuck thing, but none of the other crabs have this, none of our shore crabs or anything else. Also, these are kind of intermediate in size. Thank you for the lights. They're a lot bigger than our native shore crabs, but they're a lot smaller than most of the red rocks and Dungeness, unless you're looking at the little guys. They are related to roaches. They're both arthropods. Yes, Eva.
So you're only seeing them in the bay, you're not along the shoreline. So if you're out at like Cape Arago, you see them in the rocks out there?
I haven't looked for them out there, but most of the places that they've been found in the literature where other people have found them was in the bays and estuaries and not on the rocky coasts. So that could be something that I could try to sample this summer, but even some of the sites like this one here is kind of out North Bay Drive by the oyster plant up there. This was on a rocky shelf, and I didn't catch any green crabs there. In fact, some of the ones here that it would seem to be the substrate might have had something to do, what was on the bottom, if it was rocks or sand or mud, that sort of thing. I don't know, just because they want to be, I guess. I don't really have a good answer for that. Well, I think that's, sir. They'll eat anything. So natural vegetation, what people have mostly been studying in places like down in Bodega Bay in California, they've found that they are really negatively impacting the clams because they have a much stronger grip strength than the Dungeness crabs do. I have a friend that has a scar from a green crab because they're little ninjas. They can reach around behind and grab you, and they can crush the clams in their claw much better than the Dungeness can. So, good question, Connor. What? I do like pizza, Leah. Thank you. Would the crabs eat pizza? We could try that next year. I will bring you in a crab and you can try that third period.
Do we have crab on the pizza?
I don't know. Well, I think we probably better start the movie, guys. Thank you very much.